The GameCube is home to one of the best gaming libraries of all time. I can still go back, have a good time, and even learn a new thing or two about many of my favorite GameCube games. Back then, Nintendo's game design philosophy catered more towards dedicated players. In most cases, the developers crafted the game engines to be as fast and efficient as possible. Today, we will be discussing an often forgotten game that pushed this concept to the absolute limit, F-Zero GX.
The depth and complexity in its gameplay systems allowed for limitless exploration and discovery from the very beginning. Welcome to F-Zero GX Time Attack History. Almost 2 years into the GameCube's lifespan, Nintendo started making plans to develop the follow-up to the cult classic N64 title, F-Zero X. At this point in time, F-Zero was still considered a staple franchise for Nintendo, as it brought a unique brand of intense speed and game complexity to the racing genre. In an unprecedented move, Nintendo hired a Sega-owned development team to make the next major entry in the F-Zero franchise. Amusement Vision, from Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 fame, were given full control over the project. Despite having a relatively small number of games under their belt, Amusement Vision impressed the world with its masterful design and addicting gameplay. The collaboration with Sega was a bold move for Nintendo and likely lost the company money due to poor sales. Despite all that, it resulted in a legendary game. Well, technically, 2 different F-Zero games were made. The project was developed into 2 separate versions, being AX for the arcade and GX for the GameCube. AX was likely developed as a base for GX, as it was the first to release and only contains a small fraction of content compared to GX. F-Zero AX only includes 6 tracks and 8 playable racers, which would all be unlockable in F-Zero GX. Additionally, F-Zero AX uses a slightly altered version of the game engine to better suit the arcade experience. This differentiates the gameplay between the 2 versions quite a bit. This video will mostly focus on F-Zero GX, as it is the definitive home console version of the game. F-Zero AX was set to launch first in early June 2003 for Japan. Many posts of hype and discussion are buzzing about the game on Japanese forums such as 2channel aka Nichanaru. Any 2channel posts in this video have been translated by Google Translate. Translating Japanese to English is notoriously difficult, as some phrases or ideas may not directly carry over to English. Additionally, Japanese players use many slang terms to describe their techniques, which don't translate properly through online translators. Within days of release, Japanese players were already pushing the game engine to its limit. Forum posts can be seen discussing various mechanics and differences from the previous installment, F-Zero X. It was clear that F-Zero AX was on a completely new engine with very different mechanics. The only things to actually carry over from F-Zero X were basic gameplay functions and some aesthetics. This caused some die-hard fans to come away with bad impressions initially, but the general reception was incredibly positive. It would only take a few days for the first game-changing technique to be discovered. On the 16th of June 2003, an anonymous 2channel poster shared information about a turbo drift. A turbo drift is when the player breaks the machine's grip and uses a combination of steering and strafing to gain a ton of forward momentum. The speed was difficult to handle, so players could usually only pull it off on straightaways. The steering wheel and pedals also made it physically difficult to pull off. The turbo drift would later be shortened to T-drift and define high-level F-Zero AX play. F-Zero GX was set to release in Japan about 1 month later, on July 25, 2003. Early impressions of the game can be seen online from those who were able to try the game ahead of launch. On the night before release, it was confirmed that the aforementioned T-drift didn't work in this version. Many other notable differences in control and physics were also confirmed. A handful of F-Zero X players from Europe even imported the Japanese version in order to start experimenting with the new mechanics. No one could have predicted the sheer amount of new strategies this game had to uncover. Just like its predecessor X, GX received critical and fan acclaim, despite some players faulting the game for its very high difficulty. In particular, the story mode pushes players to their limit through various challenges. There is also a complete lack of in-game tutorial or technique guide, which likely drove many new players away. For those willing to face the intense challenge, they were greatly rewarded.
Among the many game modes, Time Attack is our primary focus for this video. Time Attack is where players use any vehicle to set their best 3-lap time on any non-story mode track in the game. This includes 41 unique playable races, all with widely different machine stats and gameplay.
GX also carries over a feature from F-Zero X, which allows players to adjust machine performance settings from a scale of max acceleration to max speed. The performance setting greatly impacts the control and stats of every machine. Naturally, players began experimenting with many different performance settings to find the fastest option. A majority of the main cast would not see much use at top levels of play, as they were clearly outclassed in just about every way by a select few. One character in particular quickly showed dominance over the rest and went on to define a huge part of the competitive metagame. The Fat Shark is an absolute marvel of a machine. According to various lore resources, Don Genie fitted the machine with 3 engines of solid gold, along with countless other perks. This carried over to gameplay, as it was clearly a cut above the rest. Fat Shark is the heaviest machine in the game, which would prove to be an important attribute for maintaining high speeds in GX. Additionally, Fat Shark touts the strongest boost strength and the second highest top speed among the original machines. Fat Shark does have some flaws, such as a very high rate of speed loss from any sort of turning, as well as being cumbersome to control in general. As many players became accustomed to the game's tuning and grip mechanics, they learned to mitigate the speed loss by performing quick turns effectively. Quick turning is a term for the most basic and efficient way to turn in the game. By pressing both shoulder buttons for just a moment, the grip of the machine would break, allowing you to take incredibly sharp turns in an instant. The Japanese term for quick turning is uchidori, and translates to inside drift. Black Bull is another standout, as it has the highest top speed among the cast. However, it is held back by a somewhat weak boost and slippery handling. The slippery trait makes handling difficult for new players and causes a lot of speed loss when quick turning. Despite having a steep learning curve, a handful of top times would be set with Black Bull in the first month. Players wouldn't be able to unlock the full potential of Black Bull for many years, but it would continue to grow stronger with every advanced technique. In addition to the 41 original machines, GX also comes with a custom machine creator. This allows players to create and customize thousands of unique machines consisting of parts unlocked throughout the game. This pushes the number of playable machines through the roof. Performance of custom machines varies wildly, but they generally perform better than most of the original characters. Quite a few custom machines were considered viable and used for setting top times, but it wouldn't take long for top players to discover the more optimal part combinations. The first groundbreaking discovery would be made only 3 days after the Japanese release, on July 28, 2003. An anonymous user on Nichanaru would post a personal best of 1 minute 46 seconds on Sand Ocean Surface Slide, which caused shock amongst the community. Such a record seemed unreal at the time, as it beat the staff Ghost by a whopping 10 seconds. Naturally, members of Nichanaru eagerly probed for details about how to set such a time. The poster would go on to describe a weird quirk in the game mechanics that he stumbled upon. At max acceleration settings, steering and strafing in one direction would accelerate the machine immensely, often to speeds around 2,000 kilometers an hour. In order to make full use of this oddity, the poster began to rapidly perform these turns in a back and forth manner. Sure enough, this allowed for even more speed. The poster would describe this technique as dako. In English, dako translates to meandering, meaning the act of following a winding course. Japanese players would also refer to dako as doridori, which is short for drift. As word spread about this powerful technique, it would be given the more definitive title, snaking. 2 days later, the first recorded instance of dako would be uploaded on Nichanaru. The video depicts Black Bull on Mute City Twist Road. The anonymous player exceeds speeds of over 2,000 kilometers per hour for most of the run, leading to an incredible record for the time. The reception to snaking was extremely mixed, to say the least. Forum posts still remain that show users exclaim, "Let's remove this stupid bug in the US and PAL version," after contacting Nintendo about the issue. Snaking can break a lot of the challenging sections of this game due to its raw speed, but it also came with some significant drawbacks for the players. Snaking on some surfaces, such as pipes, proved to be incredibly hard and awkward to pull off. The inputs also proved to be problematic for a majority of players. Snaking requires the player to quickly alternate between full left and full right inputs with both the control stick and the shoulder buttons. This quickly leads to fatigue or pain for some players. It also has the potential to cause long-term hand problems if the player is not careful. Due to the polarizing nature of snaking, there was a growing demand for a more conventional racing experience. This caused many players to start exclusively choosing 100% max speed setting for their machines. As mentioned before, snaking lost all of its effectiveness at these settings. Instead, players had to rely on pure driving skills to come out ahead. This playstyle appealed to the majority of classic F-Zero fans. Despite almost always being slower than snaking, max speed still had a ton of advanced techniques and strategies to uncover. It also went on to remain the most active and competitive portion of the community. Several talented players emerged from Japan for both max speed and snaking playstyles. Most notable are Mumu and Mitani, who went on to dominate at max speed and snaking, respectively. It was a hectic time for Japanese GX players, as it was difficult to keep up with all of the techniques being found. There were still many more to come. On August 8, 2003, a strange replay was posted on dchaser.com by the user Cfal. The video is low quality and opts for the cinematic view, making it difficult to tell what the player is doing. After roughly 1 minute of driving, the custom machine begins to strafe turn after catching some air at the drop-off point. The machine then proceeds to gain height for over 20 seconds, where it then dives back down to the track. Players that saw the video were shocked by yet another massive discovery in this game. The next day, multiple Japanese players share their experiences with the flying exploit. Users discussed the custom parts that were used, and it was concluded that this trick was only possible with very light machines at max acceleration settings. Some users try continuously gaining height for upwards of 10 to 20 minutes. This allowed them to explore the expansive black void on the outskirts of each track. They would then dive back down, reaching top speeds of over 9,000 kilometers per hour. Players eventually started using this exploit to reach the speed cap and set unbeatable top speed world records. Players noticed that landing back on the track after flying would usually result in an explosive death. This is due to the game's checkpoint system, which stops players from skipping very specific invisible checkpoints throughout the track. The specifics of checkpoints would not be fully understood until much later. Later that same day, an anonymous poster uploads a time attack replay on Big Blue Drift Highway using a light custom machine. The run starts by snaking through the first lap until reaching the first drop-off. He then starts to snake into the air and fly above the entrance of the intended path. After a few air strafes, the ship dives back down and lands inside the last section of the pipe. It was clear that flying had a lot of potential for setting fast times, but the knowledge simply wasn't available at the time. The flying videos quickly spread overseas onto various internet forums such as IGN, Game FAQs, and F-Zero Central. Many people expressed disdain for the flying exploit as it seemed like the sign of a broken game. This got especially bad as many players were already unhappy with the advent of snaking. Despite having the potential to break the entire metagame, flying wouldn't be directly banned or restricted until months later. That brings us to the end of this chapter, but the story is far from done. F-Zero GX would go on to live a long, healthy life with some of the most incredible records of all time. Special thanks to Tony Tai for providing the inspiration for this video. I hope you will join me next time on F-Zero GX Time Attack History. Thanks for watching.